You've got your dial tuned to KGHI 91.5 FM, Community Public Radio in Grays Harbor.
Monday. Good morning and welcome to the Scrimmage. I'm Daniel Hargrove.
And I'm Justin Domashevitz, and we've got a great show today. Hopefully Daniel can make it through without crying.
Oh, yes, you lost.
To the Huskies.
We'll talk about that, as well as, guess what? Matt Stafford single-handedly beating the Seahawks on Sunday.
And the San Francisco Giants win their second World Series in 3 seasons.
But first, let's get it going with the 2-minute drill.
Punch left, fake right, 35 base special, Z behind right.
The 2-minute drill starts now.
In an interview with Michael Strahan, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell agreed that last January's Pro Bowl was, quote, embarrassing, and said that the NFL would consider canceling the game if play could not be improved. Justin, should the NFL get rid of the Pro Bowl?
You know, I agree that the last year's game was kind of embarrassing, probably if you were a player who played in it. But I don't care what anybody says. I love the Pro Bowl. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy watching the stars get out there and play hard. Or no, not play hard.
See, I want to see a flag football game instead where the centers play quarterback and the offensive linemen are the receivers.
Yeah, I don't really even want to see the stars play hard, to be honest, because the last thing I want to see is somebody get injured in the Pro Bowl. After a loss to the Detroit Lions, the Seattle Seahawks are now 4-4 on the season. Daniel, will they finish the season better than 8-8, and what are their chances of making the playoffs?
I think they're going to finish better than 8-8. Their best chance probably finish around 10-6. Most likely they'll be around 9-7, which makes the playoffs a little bit sketchy. If they're at 9-7, they probably won't make the playoffs. They have finished the tough part of their schedule already, so we'll see how they do down the stretch. The Oklahoma City Thunder traded 2012 Sixth Man of the Year James Harden and a few other players to the Houston Rockets for Kevin Smith, Jeremy Lamb, and draft picks. Justin, who got the better end of this deal?
You know, I think this is a deal that kind of works out for both sides. The Houston Rockets got a star player in James Harden. The Thunder were not going to pay him the max deal that he was looking for, with Durant and Westbrook already both there not getting max deals. Essentially what the Thunder got in return for this is Kevin Smith, who's a proven scorer. He will be a supplementary scorer. He'll be the third scorer on the team. It's a perfect spot for him. They also basically got 3 first-round draft picks. They got 2 2013 first-round draft picks and Jeremy Lamb, who was the first-round draft pick for the Rockets last year. This is kind of a deal that worked out for both sides in the end. I think if you're the Thunder, you're very happy with the way it turned out. Mark Sanchez completed just over 50% of his passes and turned the ball over twice in a 30-9 Jets loss to the Miami Dolphins yesterday. Sanchez stinks.
Yes.
Daniel, is it Tebow time in New York?
Tebow! I'm pretty sure you ask me this question every week, and every week I respond with Tebow, because Tebow time needs to come to the New York Jets. That was a terrible answer to that question. And it's all because I'm about to read the next question, which is the Oregon State Beavers lost to the Washington Huskies on Saturday night, ruining their perfect season. Justin, do the 11th-ranked Beavers still have a shot at a BCS bowl game? Why did you even write this one?
So I could say, Daniel, are you kidding me? This is a ridiculous question. In order for that to happen, not only would they have to make it through their next couple of games, which are against Stanford and someone else good, they'd have to beat Oregon. They're not going to beat Oregon. They're going to lose 70-13.
Oh, SU. Fight. Well, it was fun. First time we were 6-0 since 1906. But still, we have never gone to 7-0. Curse you, UW, and curse that guy who wrote that article saying that UW was soft. That's the reason why we lost. It was just bad juju.
It wasn't juju.
Juju.
That was an actual effect that was caused by bulletin board material. That's not juju. That's a different thing. Like, the Huskies were able to post that up on the bulletin board and be like, look at this Oregon writer. He says we're soft.
Okay, you're right.
He says it doesn't even matter
That's
who
motivation.
plays quarterback.
That's motivation. It's not juju.
Yeah.
Although it turns out Vaz did pretty well when he came in.
Yes.
Mannion, I love him, but I think he might have tried to come back a little too early, seeing that Cody Vaz was tearing up defenses, and he's like, I got to get back in there. Yeah, well, it doesn't help your cause when you throw 4 interceptions.
And really, it wasn't a great week overall for Pac-12 teams in the BCS rankings because Oregon State was ranked 7. They lose. They drop down to 11. USC, who was ranked 9, loses, and they drop down to 17. And Oregon gets jumped by Notre Dame, even though they win and score 70 points.
It's harsh.
So Notre Dame, although Oregon's still at 4, they were at 4 already. Notre Dame jumped them from 5 to 3 with an impressive win over a ranked Oklahoma team. I don't really have a serious problem with that. Oregon's strength of schedule is pretty
It's
lame.
cheesecake right now.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, when you look at the overall BCS rankings, Kansas State right now, they're ranked at number 2. I mean, who saw that coming?
You know, I'm not sure who saw that coming, but that is a tough team. Their quarterback, Klein, is an absolute stud, and I think them and Oregon are really going to be battling it out by blowing out teams for the rest of the year to see who gets to play in that national title game against Alabama.
You don't think Notre Dame has got? What if Notre Dame wins out?
Notre Dame could do it too. This could be. It's definitely a good thing we're going to a playoff next year, but if we weren't, this year would make that happen. We could have 4 undefeated teams, all with decent cases to be in the national championship. This isn't Boise State and Nicholls State, high school teams beating up on other high school teams. This is 4 decently big programs that have a good shot of making a BCS championship argument.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just think that something's going to happen between now and the end of the season. It seems like every time we get to about this point of the season and we've got like 4 or 5 teams that are all really in the thick of it, somebody does something to mess up. Well, I believe somebody, and you know what? It could be Alabama because they play in the SEC, so basically every game for them is a potential trip-up game. Yeah. One of these 4 teams at some point is going to lose a game, and that's going to push them out of the equation.
Yeah, but Alabama's gone through the hardest part of their schedule before their SEC championship, so I guess they could lose the SEC championship game. Notre Dame made it past their toughest part of the schedule, beating Oklahoma. Florida was a team that a lot of people thought were going to be one of those teams, and they did have that trip-up moment against Georgia. So it's really going to be interesting coming down the stretch. It's going to be interesting to see if there are any crazy upsets or if this is finally the year that everybody's going, great. We have 4 teams that deserve a shot at this.
I feel like you gave up really quickly and easily on your Beavers' chances of getting a BCS bowl game, Daniel.
Well,
I
guess not.
They
You
could
said
still win
BCS
out.
championship
No,
game.
I said BCS bowl game.
Okay. Well, what are there, 3 or 4 of those?
I think there are 6.
Oh, well, that's not. They still got a shot at that then. They would just have to run the table.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because they got to play Oregon, and they're going to lose 70-13.
Probably not going to be 70-13.
55-12.
It's in Corvallis.
55-6. 60. Okay. Here
I
we go.
loathe you.
63-6.
Can we stop picking scores for the Oregon State game?
66-3. Am I going in the wrong direction?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Okay, then let's move on.
The Seattle Seahawks just got dominated by Matthew Stafford. Really, Russell Wilson is the scapegoat for most of their losses. Everybody's like, oh, if Matt Flynn was the quarterback, we would have won that game. Well, Russell Wilson played well. They put 24 points on the board, and they still lose. And it's because Matthew Stafford, 34 for 49, 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. They made him look like Peyton Manning out there.
Yeah, and it's been a struggle for the Seahawks on the road. It's one thing when a quarterback comes into CenturyLink Field trying to deal with the 12th man, trying to deal with that crowd noise, trying to deal with everything that goes along with being a visitor in Seattle. When they go on the road, it's much harder for the Seahawks defense to make quarterbacks look bad.
You know, with the difference of play being so drastic between how they play at home and how they play on the road, I would almost say CenturyLink Field is an unfair advantage. Their home stadium is too good and too loud that it almost makes it unfair to play there, seeing as how poopy they play on the road and then how stout their defense is at home.
I mean, the numbers show that, right? They're 3-0 at home, and they're 1-4 on the road. I mean, they're a good team. They're a bad road team. They do not travel well. And I think in part that could be because they're in Seattle, so every road trip pretty much is a longer road trip than most teams have to deal with, when teams play close together and we're so far from everything. But, there's really no good excuse because you're out on there. The field is still 120 yards long. The field is still 50 yards wide, and you got to go out there and you got to play the same game.
Thank you, Russell Wilson, for that shocking explanation of field dimensions. Another terrible stat in this game for the Seahawks is the Detroit Lions were 12 for 16 on third down. That is unheard of. 50% is good in the NFL on third down. 12 for 16, that's 75%. That is 75%. My math is accurate.
Oh, man. Now, this has been a recurring theme for the Seahawks, and I'm not going to try to say like it's an isolated deal just for the Seahawks because third down efficiency is a huge stat. It's probably one of the top 5 most important stats that I look at in every single box score. Turnovers, third down efficiency, both humongously important, but every time the Seahawks don't perform well, their third down efficiency is not very good. They're 3 for 9 in this game. When you're not efficient on third down, that means you're not giving your defense a chance to get off the field and rest. And the Seattle defense needed rest in this game.
Yeah, they did. They were running up and down the field chasing after Titus Young.
Exactly. And the one thing that you hear even from the commentators during the game constantly is you got to keep going. You got to convert third downs to keep your offense on the field, and you got to get off the field on third down. And the Seahawks did not do that in this game. As you already mentioned, Detroit 12 for 16, Seattle 3 for 9. If I look at all the numbers in this entire game, that's the one that stands out to me the most.
Yeah, and another key number for me is Marshawn Lynch only got 12 carries in this game. And he was running the ball effectively. I mean, he had a 77-yard run, but still 12 carries for 105 yards. You'd think they would feed him a little bit more in a close game. And, yeah, I know the offense, the scoring-wise, wasn't really the deal for them. But you talk about time of possession. You talk about keeping your defense rested. Running the ball helps in that too.
You know, it's so funny because I feel like a hypocrite when I say this because I'm continuously saying Pete Carroll needs to open up the offense. Pete Carroll doesn't like scoring touchdowns. Pete Carroll this, Pete Carroll that. And then I'm like, I look at the box score and I see Marshawn Lynch carries the ball 12 times, and I think, what on earth are you doing? I mean, it's just ridiculous. He's the best offensive player on your team. Give the guy some Skittles and give the guy the ball.
Exactly. Keep the beast happy, and well, maybe you want to make the beast angry. Give him Skittles after he scores a touchdown.
Okay, I can dig it. Or take his Skittles away before he goes on the field and say, you can't have these until after you score a touchdown, Marshawn. What do you think that would go? Actually, I wouldn't do that because he probably would punch me in the face.
Yeah, Marshawn would beat you up.
Okay.
A little too easily.
Let's talk about the 77-yard touchdown run because, holy wow, who knew Marshawn had wheels like that?
Absolutely blazing speed. He was pulling away from people in open field.
He outran a guy.
He outran many guys.
I saw one.
Well, there was a couple more behind him that he was outrunning as well.
Okay, but there was also a couple guys that were gaining. But you know what? We're not going to focus on that. That was a touchdown.
And 77 yards, I mean, that is just awesome. We haven't seen a long touchdown run like that in a while. He finally breaks through, and it was on a toss to the outside. Usually you don't see Marshawn running outside the tackles.
That's probably why it was so successful, because they didn't see it coming.
Exactly. They're stacking the box in the middle, and just because you usually use the passing game to spread defenses out, maybe a couple of toss sweeps to Marshawn on the outside, that can spread some defenses out too. And you know what? He made him pay going untouched for 77 yards. The guy looked awesome on that one.
And Marshawn is having a really good year. I expect him to finish strong as well because the second half of the year last year was way better for him than the first. So I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't expect him to finish strong as well, which makes the question even more interesting. What's going to happen for the Seahawks for the rest of this season? You kind of talked about this a little bit in the 2-minute drill, but I want to go game by game here because I mean, the Seahawks are really past the toughest part of their schedule. I mean, they've already played New England. They've already played the Packers. They've already played San Francisco in San Francisco, and they've come out of this 4-4. They've lost games that I wanted them to win, but they've also won some games that I didn't think they were going to win.
Exactly, and that's the main thing. A lot of Seahawks fans are angry right now that they're 4-4. When at the beginning of the season, you look at this schedule and you say, yeah, Seahawks are 4-4. You'd be like, well, that looks about right. But it's the games that we've lost that have really started to upset some people, and it's those road games.
Now, in our next two games, we've got Minnesota at home and the Jets at home. And the Jets, I think that's a game that we win. I mean, we should have won this past week. You know, I'm not saying
both of those games.
Nothing is guaranteed. Minnesota is better than we thought they were.
They're not who we thought they were.
They're not who we thought they were. But at the same time, I mean, they've showed the capacity to stink, and we got them at home.
Yeah,
and they've got an inexperienced quarterback, maybe an under-talented quarterback.
Playing in Seattle for his first time.
I think that's a game we win. I think we win against the Jets. So then the Seattle Seahawks are 6-4 again at that point, which is what we're expecting them to do. And I think we're looking at it like we're in pretty good shape again.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that is when it gets a little tougher because they have Chicago in Chicago, and they're playing some excellent football right now. So that should be a tough game. But you're right. I think they win these next two games. The fans start to get a little bit more happy. But then again, they have to go on the road and show that they can play.
And now I'm looking at the whole rest of this schedule, all these 8 games, and the only game that I look at and think, yeah, that's a loss, is at Chicago. And that is in week 12, I believe. But it's 4 games from now because we got home to Minnesota, home to the Jets. Then we're going to Miami, which I believe is a question mark game. Then we're at Chicago.
An early start.
So all the other games that I'm looking at here, I'm just looking at Chicago as the only one that I say, yeah, that's a loss. We're home to Arizona, we're at Buffalo, home to San Fran, and home to St. Louis. So I'm looking at this thinking we got 4 wins, we got 1 loss, and we got 3 question marks. Because at Miami, we're traveling to the East Coast. That's an early start game. Miami has proven that they're a decent team and they can play good football. And who knows, maybe Matt Moore will be quarterbacking at that point.
Matt Moore!
And Daniel will have a Beaver to cheer for because by that time the BCS game hopes for the Beavers will be totally shot.
Harsh.
I'm sorry.
I thought we were past that.
No, we're not past it. I'm going to be talking about it for weeks. Anyway, the other question mark game that I've got down the line a little bit is at Buffalo. That's a mid-December game. You're going to one of the coldest places to play in the entire NFL, and you're playing against a Buffalo team with playmakers.
Absolute roller coaster out there in Buffalo.
That's exactly it. I mean, we could get a horrible Buffalo team, but you've got playmakers on that team, and you're going to be playing in really, really challenging elements. So I think that's a question mark game as well. Then home to San Francisco, I feel like we got a pretty good shot in that one. I want to call it a win, but in the end, San Francisco's tough enough. It's a question mark for me. So, I'm thinking we got 4, 5, maybe 6 wins down the road. And if that's the case, then I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, if they go 10-6, I think that's a playoff record. 9-7 is where it gets dicey. 8-8, which if they lose all those question marks, you're not going to make the playoffs at 8-8 this year. This isn't the NFC West of old where 7-9 gets you into the playoffs. This is the new NFC West where the Niners are a solid team, and you have to really push it. They're probably pushing to get a 10-6 wild card berth.
Okay, hypothetical for you, Daniel. I know how much you love hypotheticals. The Seahawks finish 8-8. That's the 3rd consecutive mediocre season. What are we saying about Pete Carroll?
If this wasn't a show-me-something year, then next year he's on the hot seat. Seriously, we need to see something this year, and he took a risk in going with Russell Wilson, and if that pays off down the stretch, I think all is fine. But if they go 8-8, they miss the playoffs again, next year, that's when you got to get it done. I mean, some teams, they don't even give their head coach that long to figure things out. That'll be his 4th year, and he'll be on the hot seat. If they don't make the playoffs in that year, then he'll be done. And you know what? Who knows? Even after this year, if they go 8-8 and they're disappointing down the stretch with the tough part of their schedule down, but they can't win a road game, it could be questionable.
And exactly like you said, if they go down the stretch and they're losing games that they should be winning, they finish mediocre, and they just really struggle on the road, I think we're talking about Pete Carroll being on the hot seat, and I really think that this is where the discussion happens. If Pete Carroll had just started Matt Flynn, then he wouldn't be as much on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to go back and look at every single mistake that Russell Wilson made all year that could have possibly potentially maybe cost the Seahawks a game, add up the wins that they could have gotten if they had not had those mistakes, figure what Matt Flynn would have done if they stuck him in there, and question Pete Carroll for making the decision to put the rookie third-round draft pick in instead of the somewhat sort of maybe veteran guy that you paid a lot of money to bring in as a free agent.
Yeah, that's the obvious move to point to. The problem is who knows what Matt Flynn would have done.
The Flynners will know,
The
Daniel.
Flynners will know, of course. But does Matt Flynn take him down the field to beat the Patriots? Russell Wilson's made some of his mistakes to lose some games, or people say to lose some games, but does Matt Flynn make the big plays that they needed to win some games as well? And I think that's where I stand on it is, yeah, Matt Flynn might not have made as many mistakes, but would he have also made as many big plays when they needed it?
Silly Flynners. As much as I would love to spend all day goofing on silly Flynners and talking about how awesome and how much I love Russell Wilson, we really need to move on to the local sports roundup.
Running for 199 yards in the first half, the Bulldogs took over the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball and quickly and completely took care of their rivals from Elma for a 47-7 Evergreen 1A football victory in East County Civil War at Davis Field. Montesano's Tucker Ababo ran for 211 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 71-yard score in Montesano's game. Storming from behind in the second half, Aberdeen ended its football season on a winning note, scoring 15 unanswered points in the second half. The Bobcats rallied to upend Ridgefield 15-9 in a Greater St. Helens League 2A finale Friday night on a wet, muddy field at Ridgefield.
Hoquiam did not lack offensive production in Friday night's game, but stifling defense was the force that helped the unbeaten Grizzlies to a victory over Forks. Limiting the Spartans to just 9 yards of total offense and 1 first down in the game, Hoquiam wrapped up an Evergreen 1A League championship with a 52-7 rout of the Spartans. Superstar senior running back Nolan Hoynes rushed for 287 yards and 4 touchdowns in the win. Exchanging their big play offense for an exemplary display of smash-mouth football, the Raymond Seagulls have ended their 13-year state playoff drought. Daryl Ratsavongzi rushed for 136 yards and 3 touchdowns as the Gulls captured the Pacific League football title with a 26-0 victory over rival Willapa Valley on Thursday night.
All right, Justin, you were at the Grizzlies' last game against Forks, and you've covered them a few times this year, as have I. What are you thinking about their chances going into the playoffs? Because they've been dominating everybody that they've played so far, but we've seen it a few times happen with Montesano, where they run through their league, they run through their regular season, and then they struggle in the playoffs a little bit. And there are some tough teams out there, especially the one that everybody's pointing to, which is Kings. How do you think their playoff run is going to end up?
It's like you said, you never know. And we don't know. There's not enough games that are played between the teams and between the leagues to really be able to tell who's better than who. Here's what I know about Hoquiam. They are strong on defense, as strong as any team that I've seen. They are very, very strong at running back. Nolan Hoynes is awesome, and he's not the only weapon they have coming out of the backfield. They can use Paul Gertz. They can use Drew Bravos. They can go to Devin Kelly. They can have Evan Erickson run the ball out of the backfield. They've got a multitude of rushing options. The one thing I worry about is in this past game, they really tried to work on the passing game. And now I have seen and been very, very impressed with the progress that Evan Erickson has made from last year to this year, the first couple times that I saw him. He seemed to really struggle with the conditions, and that's a normal thing for any quarterback, especially a high school quarterback, struggling with really, really, really wet, sloppy conditions and the ball slipping out of his hands. Every playoff team is going to come in with a game plan to stop Hoynes, and the Grizzlies need to figure out something on offense to be able to do it. I believe that Erickson has the tools to make that happen. The only thing that I believe that could prevent that from happening is really soggy, wet conditions.
Yeah, and you mentioned their defense, but in covering them when they have played Kings before, Kings likes to spread it out. They have a lot of speed on the outside, and that's not really what the Grizzlies have centered their defense around stopping. Most of the teams that they face are power running teams that like to use their backs. They usually have a star running back, and that's what their defense has been built around to stop. They don't really see that matchup with a passing offense, a spread out passing offense that often. I think when Elma gets better, that'll be a better test for them every year to figure out how to defend a spread offense that throws the ball a lot. But this year they didn't really have to worry about it because the offensive line could not protect Lane Sutton in Elma against the rush of the Hoquiam Grizzlies or the Montesano Bulldogs for that matter. Now, you really have to change your philosophies. If you try and just go with your base stack 5-3 defense against 4 good receivers, maybe if there's only a couple of guys you have to worry about, you're fine staying with it. Your corners are solid. Trust them on the outside. But with 4 good receivers, there's a lot of space out there. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of adjustment they go with when they run up against a team like that. Now, you mentioned their offense. Personally, I think their offensive line is really good.
Offensive line is solid.
And opening up holes for Nolan, you don't have to open up the biggest hole for him. He's an excellent running back. He's very good at finding those, and Paul Gertz does a great job reading his rushing lanes as well. So I guess my question mark is more the other way around, is can their defense slow down a spread attack like that? Because I think that their offense is powerful enough, even if the other team is completely focused on stopping the run. They've shown it before that they can run anyway. So I think those games could get into weird style shootouts where one team is throwing the ball and the other team is running it.
Kind of like what you said about Hoynes, is that they don't have to open that big of a hole for him. The one thing that I really like about Hoynes is that he's a running back that can create things from nothing because he is really fast, but he's not just a speed guy. He also has demonstrated a significant amount of elusiveness, and I've seen him stiff arm and truck people this season as well. So he's a guy that can take a run that doesn't seem like it's going to go very far and turn it into something, and that makes me think that even when the level of the defenses that they play gets tougher and tougher, that he's still going to be able to contribute and put up big games. Now, when it comes to the Hoquiam defense, the hard part is you're so used to those 5 linebackers that you got out there. You're talking about 5 really, really solid players. What are you going to do when you've got 4 receivers out there? Do you have the athletes to bring more defensive backs on the field? And how much are you losing as athletes at that point? Is it worth it to keep the linebackers on the field and try to fill those spaces rather than bring players that may be more suited for that role, but you drop significantly in athletic ability? And all 5 of Hoquiam's linebackers are solid.
Yeah, and I think that the athletes that they have at linebacker could probably transition to playing pretty good defense on the outside. They just have to be well-versed in that ability. They haven't had to do it very much. They haven't been covering guys. But if they're healthy, this is if they're healthy. If they have Cody Parker healthy and playing safety, so Nolan Hoynes doesn't have to, then I think they're in excellent shape. Also, if Devin Kelly is healthy, he was in street clothes at their last game as well, then Kelly can cover an outside guy. I fully expect that Nolan, if in the right mindset, can cover an outside guy as well. Those 2 guys are athletic enough. They usually play linebacker, but I think they can. But I think that you have to have Cody Parker back at the safety position so you can move Nolan to be able to cover one of those guys on the outside. But then it's just matchups because I've seen some speed in those other teams, and they're really fast.
Yeah, and so hopefully what you're saying is, Kelly and Parker, those are the big ones. If the Grizzlies can get healthy and be completely ready to go, we're thinking they're going to make a state championship push.
I think they have the talent. And you know what? In high school, if you have a superstar player, you can ride on their back to a good push. Problem is there's some other good players out there in the state. That's going to do it for our time today. Justin, how can you find us on the interwebs?
Well, you can go to our website, www.thescrimmage.net. Also, be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
So for Justin, the Backstreet Boy, Don Mashevitz,
come on,
and Andrew, the Get Well Soon Gross, I've been Daniel Hargrove, and you've been listening to The Scrimmage.
O-S-U.
Fight, fight, fight.
When you say that I want it.
Thanks for listening to KGHI 91.5 FM.
Community Public Radio in Grace Harbor.